Wow. 2 weeks in a row from Robin. That's crazy. I don't know if you know this, Kurt, but Robin Williams' ghost lives in my house.
I did not know that.
I don't know why he picks my house, but, I mean, he's not bad to have around.
No,
But like every time I get the mic out, this fucking guy's yelling. And you're
I'm
kind of
glad
like,
he wants to be on the show.
and you're kind of like, all right, Robin, I don't mind having you, but
Does it got to be every week?
does it have to be every time? It gets a little old. I mean, come on, bro. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2 of Taking All Bets. We just finished up the big game, the Super Bowl. Kurt's over there looking spiffy. He's got a big smile on his face because his team won. If you didn't hear, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won the game by a wider margin than I thought they would. So it's a little tough for me. Kurt, how about you break down the game? What'd you think? How you feeling?
I mean, I'm not going to say I didn't tell you all last week, but I said the difference would be the short-handed offensive line of the Chiefs and the strong, I guess, defensive line of the Bucs. And for whoever watched the game, it was quite clear that was the difference.
Yeah. I got to say, after watching that game, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest talent I've ever seen
He's
on a
unbelievable.
football field. He ran, I read a stat, he ran 500 yards to avoid Tampa Bay defenders.
I saw a clip on, I think it was Twitter, and it was the Tampa Bay sidelines. It was Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were sitting there watching, and they said, "How did he do that? This guy is a magician." I think that was a quote from Chris Godwin, and for whoever watched it, it was amazing. He was throwing throws from his back, from in the middle of the air, being chased down from every angle, took hit after hit. He was already playing injured. That game, definitely you can't blame him, but it was still an incredible performance.
Yeah, I mean, he finished the game with 270 yards and 2 interceptions. He was 26 for 49 on throws. But around 14 minutes of the fourth quarter, he had a play where he had to roll out left, and he had about 3 Tampa Bay defenders on him, and they were wrapping him up and taking him down. And as he's going down, he threw the ball to the back end of the end zone, and the ball was barely incomplete. Just hit the pylon. And then the very next play was that play that everyone saw where he rolled out right and he was flying through the air, and he threw a sidearm with the tightest spiral I've ever seen right into the hands. I think it was the running back. And maybe it was Washington, and right into his hands, and he dropped it. And they were like, "Oh my goodness, this guy's getting no help here." But kudos to the Tampa Bay defense. They played fantastic.
And credit to Todd Bowles, because that was an incredible game plan he had coming in. It was almost like a fool me once, can't get fooled again, right? Because Tyreek Hill, in the first time they met, he had over 200 yards in the first half.
Yeah.
He was almost invisible in the first half this time, right?
Right.
And clearly they game planned. It was incredible. And I think, actually, on another note, I think it's only a matter of time until he's back as a head coach.
Yeah, I mean, they played fantastic. They game planned well. I was just thinking as you were saying that, you said, you can't give, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Did you ever hear when George H.W. Bush said that, or George W. Bush, I guess, the son, he said that at a press conference, and he completely butchered it. He goes, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, can't get fooled again." Like, he just completely lost it. So yeah, no, they game planned well. Obviously, they had a lot of film sessions after that, and they figured them out.
It's almost like the extra week, because there's 2 weeks obviously between the championship game and the Super Bowl, right? And I think that's that helped the Bucks big time. You're going home, first of all, that was at our home. It was at Raymond James.
Yep.
But the 2 weeks to prepare for that offense, I think made a big difference.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, when you're playing Kansas City, you have to play a perfect game to beat them, and that's what the Buccaneers did. I mean, they completely they figured out the offense of the Kansas City Chiefs and took it from there. And I think, yeah, that, like you said, that extra week definitely
And we said,
didn't hurt them.
No, it didn't. And last week, I'm pretty sure I said, what did it have to be? Minimum 3 sacks and 2 turnovers, correct? Or I said minimum 3 and one, at least 1 turnover, at least. And if I'm not mistaken, it might have been 2.5 and 2 turnovers. So, I mean, you can do with that information as you want. That tells you that they got the job done, right?
Yeah,
that's part of the recipe. When you have to beat the Chiefs, you have to get those.
Yeah, we were saying, like, before the show that, you know, the game, football is played in the trenches. The real game is played between the offensive and the defensive line. And with Kansas City missing some key pieces on their offensive line, it really hindered them. And Patrick Mahomes was just getting eaten alive out there. And I got to tell you, having played both positions, there is no more demoralizing feeling in the world as an offensive lineman to go up against somebody that you cannot block.
Yeah.
Like, it's the first play and you're like, whoa, that was fast. Like, how did he get around me? And then, like, the second one, you're like, I'm gonna get this guy. And then he does it again. And you're like, oh my God, this guy's so good.
Then they started saying all game long too. And you're like, yeah, you know what? It probably will be.
And then you get to that point where you're like, I'm trying everything I can. And you do like a cut block on him. Like, you just dive at his ankles and he just like pushes you down and then steps over you. And you're like, oh my God, like this, I got nothing for this guy. But then on the flip side, there is no better feeling than playing defensive line and knowing this guy cannot block me. Like, I can do whatever I want out here on the field. And I'm sure that feeling was going around inside the trenches of both teams.
Yeah. And I don't think we can't obviously not talk about Tom Brady, right? And this will back to what we were just talking about. I think if you're talking about that same thing, they did an exceptional job of keeping him on his feet, right? It was almost the opposite story. That offensive line was fantastic. And Brady just sat there all game long, untouched. And he did what Brady does.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a stat where Brady threw the ball 29 times. And I saw a stat where, there was like 5 times where he was pressured. So, 24 out of the 29 throws he threw, he had a clean pocket. It was some stat like that. On the other hand, Pat Mahomes, he threw 49 times and only 9 times did he have a clean pocket. So 40 times in the game, he was throwing under pressure. So, I mean, kudos to, obviously, again, to Tampa, both their offensive and defensive line. They both played fantastic.
Also, going forward, can we get every championship parade on boats?
Oh, yeah, we were going to get to that. If you didn't see, Tom Brady was folded like a lawn chair at the parade. I mean, he was being escorted in and he was on Pluto. He had no idea where he was. And I guess when you have 7 Vince Lombardi trophies, you can just toss one from boat to boat with no care in the world. Like, that is such a drunk guy move where you're like, this thing that is the best thing ever to win, I'm going to take a chance with it.
He's just like, oh, I have 6 more. No, not a big deal.
I got them at the house. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then has Gronk touched the trophy yet? Has anybody figured that out?
I'm not sure.
And if you don't know, Rob Gronkowski, who had a great game, by the way. He had 67 yards, 6 receptions, 2 TDs, but he has yet to touch the Vince Lombardi trophy because when he won it last time with the New England Patriots, they took it to Fenway Park for a Red Sox game. And, they're down in the batting cages having some fun. And, Rob comes up with this idea. He's like, oh, I'll step into the batter's box holding the Vince Lombardi trophy. And he's like, it'll look like I'm using it as a bat. So, it's fun. It's just boys being boys. You know what I mean? And Julian Edelman, he throws a heater right down the middle. And out of nowhere, Rob Gronkowski goes, I'm going to square up to this one. And he lays down a bunt with the trophy and just puts the biggest dent you've ever seen in the trophy. And now they're like, you can't touch it. You'll wreck it. You're going to wreck this thing. So sorry to you, Gronk. So you were saying last week how the Tampa Bay running back Leonard Fournette,
Playoff Lenny,
how he looked like a 65-year-old man running there sometimes, getting 2 yards at a time.
I said prior to the playoffs. I said he looked like he looked very refreshed this time because during the season he looked like probably he had arthritis in both hips.
Mm-hmm. Well, he had 89 yards and a touchdown.
He was awesome again.
Like Super Bowl Lenny is a real thing. And,
he was playoff Lenny. Now he's Lombardi Lenny.
And I love it. He's one of my favorite running backs in the game. So there was a few plays. Now, first of all, before we get to the plays that I have kind of jotted down here for kind of key moments in the game, I think Andy Reid coached a horrible game, and I'll tell you why. So I know you have Patrick Mahomes, who is the greatest quarterback in the world and probably the best talent we've ever seen on a football field. But it wasn't working. Like, it wasn't working. The receivers were playing terrible. The offensive line was playing terrible. And I think at halftime, they should have changed something up. And what I think they should have done personally was I think they should have run the ball more. I know they were behind, and like in that sense, you have to throw the ball. But, when you're playing on the offensive line, when you're pass blocking, that's more of a skill. You have to have good footwork and good hands and keep the guy in front of you and whatnot. Run blocking is more, it takes technique, but it's more about just like brute force. And when you're playing with backups, you have to take the chance that your running back is going to find a hole and get loose and get you that 25-yard run that might swing the momentum. But when you don't give them the chance to do that, it's hard.
Here's what I'll say, but you got to remember too, Tampa, you're playing against the number one run defense in the league. They want you to try and run the ball. Mm-hmm. So I get what you're saying, but I don't know if it would. I think that could have been even worse. But like you said, nothing was working, right? You have to, maybe that opens up some play action, maybe whatever. But I don't think they were worried. If you come out voluntarily running the ball against them, that's not going to be an issue.
The only thing I'll say is they finished with 9 points. So they finished with no touchdowns. So you have to try something. As a coach, you have the responsibility to your players to go, to admit this is not working. What we have done all year is not working right now. And it's a hard thing to admit as a player, as a coach. It feels defeating, but you have to, as a coach, be willing to change it up and go, you know what, I know they're the number one run defense, but there's always that chance that we catch them sleeping and we're off to the races. So, so some key plays that, I thought were in the game was Travarius Ward's holding, defensive holding on Mike Evans. First of all, I think that the referees were too involved in this game. What do you think?
Yeah, as much as I'm going to sound, obviously I'll say, well, the people are saying there's a lot of calls for Tampa, right? But the problem is when those were penalties. And like you said, that you could be less involved, but those receivers played a great game. The routes were fantastic, and they were forced. Those DBs were just holding on every play. That could have been a lot worse. Those plays would have been 50 yards downfield.
I think that, like, for the Travarius Ward defensive holding play, I will say, was he holding him? Yes, by the rule book, he was holding him. Did he impede him? Did he impede him on getting to his spot? No, he didn't. Like, the play was a curl route type play. And Mike Evans got to his spot. He turned around. He was looking at the quarterback. And yeah, did Travarius Ward have a handful of jersey? Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, there was just a lot of plays where, yes, they could have been called, but they very easily couldn't have been called either.
My issue with it too, my issue is those are penalties, but they hadn't been called all playoffs long. They shouldn't have been
Yes,
called during that game, right? I have
exactly.
no issue calling those, but I just need a little consistency. I never saw those in the prior two games. Those weren't
Yeah.
called in the championship game.
Well, there's another one where Tyrann Mathieu um, had a pass interference call on him in the end zone with about 10 seconds left in the first half on Mike Evans. And you see this play a lot, but basically what happened was it was in the back of the end zone was the pass interference. Brady threw the ball to Mike Evans, and the ball was about 20 feet over Mike Evans' head. There was no way he wasn't going to catch it in bounds. Now, it's a penalty. They call it a lot. I get that. But from a viewer's perspective, Tampa Bay is already up. You want to see a good competitive game. Obviously, you want to see your team win, but you want to see a good competitive game to get the juices, get the adrenaline going. And on the very next play, Antonio Brown scored the touchdown. So,
You know, I read too on Twitter. Then there's also a video to support this of our coordinator assistant coach talking. That was the wrong route. AB ran the wrong route. It was just he was able to get open and Brady found him, but that was
oh,
not
really?
that wasn't the right route he was supposed to run.
A little bit of Kansas City offense, just run
Yeah,
wherever.
he just got open.
Well, again, it was a great game. Brady's 7th Super Bowl. Bill Belichick still has 8. Rob Gronkowski, obviously another Super Bowl. JPP, his 2nd Super Bowl. JPP has never lost in the playoffs. How about that?
Wow. Did not know
Never
that.
lost. 8-finger JPP. Never lost. Never lost.
Good for him.
Never lost. So I have to ask you, as a fan of both teams, we'll move on from. Do you have anything else you want to talk about for the Super Bowl?
One last note actually. Did you know every player who scored a touchdown in that game was not on the Bucks the prior season?
I did see that. I
Yeah.
did see that. That's a very cool thing.
Just kind of neat. That's all I had to add.
Yep. By the way, I went 3 for 9 on my bets. So if you come here legitimately looking for gambling tips, good luck.
Yeah, well, you know what? The worst part is that was better than mine. So
well, I was 3 for 9. The Bucks covered. Kelsey got over 100 yards. Brady won MVP. Brady's 5th, by the way. Brady's 5th MVP. But I have to ask you, as a fan of both teams, did it feel sweeter to win on Sunday, or did it feel sweeter to win the 2018 Stanley Cup?
wow, that's tough.
The Washington Capitals, by the way, everybody.
Yeah, like I'm gonna give you, you know what I was about to say. I can't even say one came with less pain because if you look at the Bucks record, it's probably over the last decade, is it not the worst in the NFL combined record? So when I say pain, that's an understatement. But is it worse that versus your team going into that team's not very good. But when it came to the Capitals, it felt like every season we were a top 3 team in the league for the last decade, and we just could not get it done. It was that same team. It was the Penguins, right? And we could not get past them. So that just the relief when we finally did beat them, and you knew that there was no stopping that team. I don't know. That's a really tough question. I might lean towards the Capitals, but also
Yeah.
that could be the factor because that one came first, you know? So
Yeah.
it's hard to say if this one came first,
Mm.
maybe I would say that one was the first experience with one of my teams winning a championship, but they both just came. It felt like a huge relief after a lot of pain the prior
Yeah.
decade.
So for me, I would feel like it would be team that gets in the playoffs and keeps losing in the playoffs would be the team that the feeling would be sweeter for me.
Yeah.
Like in the shortened year of the NHL, Toronto made the playoffs. They actually had a really good record. And they played Boston. And Boston beat them in 7 games. Was I upset? Yeah, because they blew the 7th game. Like they were up like 4-1. Anyways, so they lose that game, and I'm upset, but I'm not really that upset. Fast forward a couple years, the Blue Jays are now good. And the Blue Jays make it to the postseason and they go on a run. They go to the ALCS and they lose again. But it's both the same scenario where the teams hadn't been in the playoffs for so long, and you just feel great that they're in the playoffs. But then the next year, the Blue Jays make it again, and they go back to the ALCS and they lose again, and that's a defeating feeling. So like, where I think the Blue Jays winning in the second year would have felt way better than them winning in the first year, because the first year you're just happy to be there, but the second year you're like, okay, we can do this, and you don't do it.
Another factor too, I felt like if you look at that roster on Tampa Bay, how many people crowned them champions before? You knew it was going to be almost a Kansas City Tampa Bay final, right?
Oh, we talked about it for months.
Yeah,
as soon as Brady signed.
Oh, absolutely. And so I think almost people had already crowned them champions or in the Super Bowl. When it came to the Capitals, everyone said, that's it. They missed their window. They had been counted out already. So it was a different going into the season. It was a lot different. The mentality, like when you're watching those games coming in as the underdog or it's a lot different feeling, right? And like you said, feeling defeated, that's a perfect way to describe it. Their prior playoff losses, you felt defeated going into that season. So I think I'd lean that way. Probably 2018 Capitals.
Yeah, and obviously you win both, so obviously it's a great feeling. I'm still waiting on the Leafs to pick it up.
They do look good this year.
Hey, I saw a stat before we get into the NFL awards. I saw a stat today. So the Leafs regularly play in the Atlantic Division, right? They don't, obviously the Canadian division's new. There's all this talk about how good are teams really, because they're not playing the other teams, like they're only playing within their division. Yeah. I will say the 3 best teams in the NHL right now are Toronto, Tampa, Boston. And they are combined for, I think, 29 wins, 4 losses, and 4 overtime losses.
So like maybe it's a good thing you did get into the North Division, eh?
Well, I'm just saying, everyone was talking about how good the Metro usually was.
Yep. No,
every year. And then I'm like, well, we got 3 pretty good teams here.
I do want you to remember one thing though. And when it comes to hockey, winning the President's Trophy is not always the key to winning the cup.
It's not.
Those numbers. It is like, obviously you try to win. You win as many games as you can. I don't believe in that. I agree. But I'm just saying the numbers aren't always in that favor when it comes to percentages.
No.
That's just another fun stat.
But we'll get into that. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
First, we got some awards to talk about. We got some NFL awards, which is the longest award show I've ever seen in my life. It's like 4 hours. Like, come on, get on with it. So, with no surprise, Aaron Rodgers wins MVP. Did you think it was up for debate?
No, there was no debate, and it should have surprised no one.
He had 4,299 yards. He had 48 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He was dominant all year.
Led the Packers to the 1 seed too.
Yeah, like just dominant. I don't think that's his third MVP. Where do you think Rodgers fits in all time? Top 10 quarterback?
Oh, definitely top 10, and there's a case for top 5, absolutely.
Yeah. If he wins another Super Bowl, he'll definitely he will 100% be in the top 5. I also love that Aaron Rodgers was just riding around in the back of a pickup truck with some beer.
That was awesome.
Just cruising. That guy's so fun off the field. Like when he goes on Pat McAfee show, it's just
Those,
it's a hoot.
yeah, he's such a good he's such a good interview every time.
Exactly. Maybe one day we'll get him on here.
Maybe one day.
Um, so no real debate with Rogers, but the defensive player of the year, there was some debate. People were upset. Uh,
I
Aaron
saw
Donald. Aaron Donald won his third defensive player of the year. He had 13 and a half sacks. He had 45 tackles, uh, 14 tackles for loss, and 45 pressures on the quarterback. Now, TJ Watt, I think he played one less game than Aaron Donald, correct? I think he played 15 or so.
Yeah.
He led the league with sacks with 15, one and a half more than Donald. He had 53 tackles. He had 23 tackles for loss, and he had 61 pressures. Who do you think should have won Defensive Player of the Year?
Now, I saw a lot of people were going at it, including JJ Watt on Twitter. He was showed those stats. And I'm trying to, when I think to myself, the difficulty it is to line up inside and put up those numbers makes me still lean towards Aaron Donald. Like the fact that he's done that for so many years, this is his third defensive player of the year in the last 4 years. Being a defensive tackle, an interior lineman, the difficulty is much higher, I would say, and I would still lean Aaron Donald.
Yeah, having played, obviously, when you play on the end, it's a one-on-one game most of the game. So you win the tackle, best on best, who's going to win? But when you're on the inside, you have a guard and a center you're going up against. It's a tough matchup, and for him to be as dominant as he is on the inside, I think a defensive tackle or nose tackle, if it's close, is always going to beat out an end.
Yep. Also, if you're playing that double team coming from the outside, most likely that double team is either going to be a tight end or a running back.
Yeah.
So that's not the same as interior, like, you know what I mean? A center, the guard, it's not the same.
And half the time, if it's a tight end, he's there for a few seconds, then he's checked out, he's gone over, and it's a flat route.
Yeah.
And so it's just to slow him down. So then it's a one-on-one battle again. But again, I think Aaron Donald deserved it. I mean, no real debate in my eyes. Now, Derrick Henry won his first Offensive Player of the Year award. Now, in my mind, just looking at it, wouldn't you think the most valuable player should be either the Offensive Player of the Year or the Defensive Player of the Year? Like, you know what I mean? Like, Aaron Rodgers plays offense, but he didn't win Offensive Player of the Year.
Well,
he won MVP.
Here's where we get into that debate about MVP. What does that really mean, right? So obviously, if you look at the difficulty, MVP, quarterback, that position, that's probably your most valuable. That makes the biggest difference at the end of the day of your team's success. But when you go into the more impressive offensive stats, running for 2,000 yards there's only 8 people who have ever done it.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes in. I think that's why I would agree. It has to be Derrick Henry. But the running back as a position is just not as valuable. Yeah. But when you're talking about pure offense, yeah, that's probably your Offensive Player of the Year.
And Derrick Henry and Aaron Rodgers, rather, I mean, he was on a better team. Like, he finished with a better record. So that was also, that goes to him. Chase Young won Defensive Rookie of the Year. This cat is good.
He is incredible.
He's a good player. There was a rumor I saw that he was getting packaged with picks and he was going down to Houston, and Deshaun Watson, as we talked about last week, was going there. But this guy's good. I mean, he was the second overall pick.
Yeah, not a chance they move him.
No, he was second overall pick. He's a cornerstone. He's like Myles Garrett. Like, I mean, he's that type of player.
Yeah, it's a good comparison.
You build around. Um, Justin Herbert won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Man, the Los Angeles Chargers, they lost Phillip Rivers, but they definitely found his replacement.
I think if they get healthy next year, that is going to be a team to look out for. They have a lot of pieces there, and he's only going to get better. He looked
Yeah,
incredible this year.
he threw for 4,300 yards, 31 touchdowns, 10 interceptions.
That's the rookie record, is it not? 31.
Yeah, he's so good, and he's only going to get better. So I mean,
That
he
was
didn't really
also
lose anything.
they missed Austin Eckler for most of that season, and that's a huge piece of that offense as well. Even he can catch out of the backfield too. I think if they get him back healthy next year, I'm telling you, that's look out for that team.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, the Chargers have been one of those teams where seems like for the last 15 years, where they've been overall, they've been good, but just not good enough. You know what I mean?
No, and that was the knock on Philip Rivers for a lot of years, right? He had that a lot of great players coming in and out of there, and they just could not get it done.
Yeah. But hopefully, it changes with Justin Herbert. I think it will. Um, Kevin Stefanski, coach of the year for the Browns. You like that pick, or
I feel like
do you
that one.
care? Do you even care who wins
I mean,
coach of the year?
I do care, and I think that was kind of again there was really no debate there. Maybe shout out Sean McDermott for the Bills,
Yeah.
but the story behind the Browns, it was 18 years till last playoff berth, 11-5 record, win a playoff game, but that's voting's done before that. But yeah, that was probably going to be the outcome either way.
Yeah. We also had, this is why the award show is the 18-hour marathon. All the Hall of Fame inductees get announced. Obviously, number one of this year's class is Peyton Manning, who is a 14-time Pro Bowler, 7-time All-Pro, 5-time MVP, 2-time Offensive Player of the Year, 2012 Comeback Player of the Year, and a 2-time Super Bowl champion, the first quarterback ever in history, until Tom Brady, to win a Super Bowl starting for 2 different teams. So
Really?
2 Super Bowls on 2 different teams.
Where do you have him in your top 5? I'm assuming he's in your top 5.
2.
2? Yeah, you know what? That's the same as me.
He's 2 for me. He's third all time in passing yards with 71,000, sorry, 940. He led the league 3 times in passing yards. He's also third in touchdowns of 539. He led the league 4 times in that category. He also holds the record for passing yards in a season as well as touchdowns in a season. That was his 2013 MVP campaign, where they absolutely got stomped by the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. I watched that game in an airport, and I almost cried in front of everybody. I was a huge Peyton Manning fan. I just loved him. Yeah, I have him too. I mean, Brady, how do you argue against Brady? He's the GOAT, obviously.
I don't think there's no more debate. I mean, if there even was before that game, there's not now. There's no debate.
There's no debate.
He's the locked-in one.
And Manning, so he's third in those major categories in passing yards and touchdowns, but he missed a full year.
Yes, that's
he
right.
Missed the year with
the neck injury.
2011 was out with the neck injury, and then the Colts moved on from him. So if he doesn't miss that year, the guy who's right in front of him is Drew Brees, who's played every year. I mean, besides this year, he got hurt for a few games, but he's played pretty much every year, every game, and he's not that far ahead of Manning. If Manning had played that year, he would still be in second. And the only reason I don't say first is Brady also missed a full season with the ACL, so he would obviously have more as well. I have him 2. I mean, you could put Joe Montana 3, probably. That's where I'd probably put him. Who's your top 5? Who's your top 5?
Wow, this gets
spontaneous.
Yep, I might. Obviously, Brady. We just talked about this. Brady 1, Manning 2, Montana 3. This gets tough here. Maybe Marino 4.
Yeah,
and maybe Aaron Rodgers. I
Aaron
think I
Rodgers,
might, yeah. But there's so once you get past three, there's a good debate for several guys. But that would be my off the top of my head right now, probably my top five.
yeah. I don't even have my top five ready. I just wanted to put you. I just wanted to
All right.
put you under the heat. Put you under the heat lamp. So Peyton Manning obviously headlines it, but no slouches either coming up next. Calvin Johnson, he'll be in the Hall of Fame. I got to tell you, between Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, maybe a few others, those are the best wide receivers I've ever seen. Calvin Johnson as a receiver might have been the best I've ever seen. Randy Moss.
I was just about to say, I have maybe you can call it a bold statement, but at least from our generation of football, our era, he may be the most individually gifted, skilled, like talented football player I've been able to watch.
He is
double teamed every game, and it did not matter.
When he was playing, he was like the LeBron James of the NFL, where he was so much more athletic than everybody else. He was so fast. He was so big. He was so strong. He has the record for receiving yards in a year with 1,964.
Absurd.
An absurd number. He led the league twice in receiving yards. He led the league once in touchdowns. Those were on terrible teams.
I vividly remember Stafford hauling balls into triple coverage, and Megatron just came down with them every time. I don't know how he did it, but like you said, he was just so much bigger, so much stronger and faster than everyone else around him.
And when he retired, I was sad because I was like, God, this guy's so good.
Not a long career either.
No,
was it 10 seasons?
Something like that. He had 6 Pro Bowls, 3 times. He was an All-Pro. Like he was so good, and to retire, I think 29 he was. You're like, come on, man. Like you're the best. Right now you are the best in the league. Why are you retiring? But anyways, he did.
I mean, good for him going out on top though, right?
Yeah, going out on top. He's 32nd all time in receiving yards. He's 23rd all time in TDs. Obviously, shoulda, woulda, coulda. If he had played a longer career, he would have been, probably in the top 10 of those categories. The final Hall of Fame inductee was Charles Woodson, who played for the Raiders and the Packers. He's a 9-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and 1-time Super Bowl champion.
I think no debate, he was obviously going to be a Hall of Famer. Incredible career as well.
See, when I started watching football, I don't know, I was probably like 12. I don't know when Charles Woodson retired, like 2009. So like when I was 12, he was already retired. And you heard of Charles Woodson. You said like, okay, like, obviously he was this great cornerback that everybody knew about, and he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I never watched him.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I was looking up his stats, his stats are ridiculous. He's 5th all-time in interceptions. And like you said before the show, like what would you say about interceptions on corners?
A corner. I said when you're judging a corner, it's hard because when they're young, you're going to target a young corner. But then if they get those high interception totals their first few years in the league, their totals should drop off the map because you don't throw at a good corner. You don't throw towards, it's like Revis Island. We talked about that prior, right? Once same as Sherman, you didn't throw to that side of the field. So it's that when it comes to judging corners, you got to look at that as well.
Yeah. Like I'll give you an example from the Patriots. Stephon Gilmore didn't have a ton of interceptions this year, but you know who did have a ton of interceptions? J.C. Jackson.
Yep.
And so they're not throwing to Gilmore because they know how good he is. He's proven how good he is. He's a former Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah.
So they start throwing to J.C. Jackson's side, and J.C. Jackson, who's way better than I thought he would be, when he first came on, I was like, this guy sucks. Now he's actually pretty good. He finished with like 7-8 interceptions this year. I mean,
he's one of the best young corners in the league.
Yeah. So I mean, you're right with that. That when they see and hear how good you are, they're not going to come after you. Do you have anything else you want to say about the awards or inductees?
Yeah, I think actually before we move on, we missed we gotta talk about Alex Smith, comeback player of the year. We did not touch it, but that was
we didn't touch him.
Just an incredible story from he almost died because of that horrific leg injury to it was an obvious pick. But I just want to say, did Ben Roethlisberger get a vote or something? How did he get one vote? That should have been unanimous. It was 49-1. So I just thought that was funny. But
some beat reporter that works for the fucking
Steelers or something.
Steelers in the background. He's like, I'll get you the votes. Don't you worry about it.
Yeah.
He's
either way.
He like goes to Congress and he's like trying to get votes to go the right way. Like, no, Alex Smith, that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, is an incredible story.
Great story. I think ESPN did a 30 for 30 on it.
He's just a great guy too. A guy you got to you root for him. Good for him and his family.
Former first overall pick.
Yep.
So we'll move on. We'll talk a little baseball. I mean, we touched on the Blue Jays and kind of, about how I wanted them to win in 2016. There was a big signing. The Los Angeles Dodgers pulled a complete Kevin Durant move and picked up Trevor Bauer, the Cy Young winner from last season, is now going to go to an already stacked rotation for the Dodgers.
I got to say, I was a little disappointed because of that. The fact that, okay, I obviously was disappointed because the Jays were in the rumors and I was hoping he'd go there, but after Springer signed, it was pretty unrealistic. Anyways, something about Trevor Bauer, I wanted him to go somewhere else and try to beat them. And it's not like I dislike the Dodgers. They're good every year. They finally won, and just now they're so good. They just got Betts. They won. Now they're adding him to. It's almost like it's like the Yankees, right? The Yankees were through the mid 2000s. They just sign everyone. They got so much money. But
they have an unbelievable roster and they spend a lot of money. I actually had to look up. I go, how do they afford this? Like how do they make enough money to spend all this money on these players? Well, I looked it up and they get like $300 million a year just from their TV deal. So, I mean, they got lots of money. But so their rotation, just run through it here. Clayton Kershaw, who we all know is maybe the best pitcher of all time. Trevor Bauer, now Cy Young winner. Walker Buehler, David Price, Dustin May. I mean,
that's the best one in baseball. You got to think.
It's disgusting, bro.
Yeah.
It's disgusting how good this is. I read something that they have out of the 7 largest per year contracts handed out, meaning the most amount of money per year handed out in history. 7, I think they have 3 or 4 of them. And they all currently play for the Dodgers.
All of them? I was trying to think because Kershaw would be 1, Bauer would be 1, and Betts, right?
Yeah, and then
you said 3 or
David
4.
Price.
I was gonna say, is David Price in there? I'm trying to think who else would have. He's the only one who makes big money. It's still there.
Yeah.
But is that's the Red Sox contract or no? Yeah, it's the Red Sox contract.
That's the Red Sox contract that they traded away. Yeah, so I mean, they're gonna have an absolutely disgusting team. Apparently, he's already been fighting with like Dodgers fans. I just read that before the show that I guess they're harassing him at home and at the hotel for autographs. And so he tweeted, he was like, will you please stop harassing me? This is getting uncomfortable.
He's a guy too. Like, it depends how you feel about the type of personality, but he's very open about how he feels. He uses his social media he claims to market the game and market himself as a player. I mean, you can watch his videos and see, like, look at his Twitter and decide what you feel about it, but I don't know. Does that bother you in any way? Do you like? I don't know how I feel about that sometimes.
It did, and then the Astros cheated.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I was a huge fan of his
You know
social
what?
media.
I gotta say that's a good way to describe it. I think I might have. I was very similar in my how I felt about it as well. As soon as I
Yeah.
saw him start to call them out all the time, and just when it came to even when he wore had those cleats on, right? The Astro
Yeah.
cleats and stuff.
And
Yeah,
he did a video in the off season where he was like just doing my off season training, and he just went over to a dumpster and started hitting it with something. And you're like,
he is pretty funny.
he is funny, and I love him as a pitcher because he literally breaks down pitching to a science. I mean, the guy's an engineer, literal engineer. He has a degree in it, and so he'll use all this technology to figure out where his fingers are on the ball. And if he puts it just here, it will spin like this. And he breaks it down to a literal science. And he gets better like at that. And obviously it paid off
That's a
last
nice
year.
change from coming for a baseball player like that, like an elite player who coming from such a traditional sport, right? Like they're
Mhm.
so afraid to move away from their traditions, and for him to use that technology to improve in the off season. And he went on to say how he likes to use a combination of information from that the team gathers through analytics and their staff, but also his own techniques, right? He's
Yeah.
very creative in his techniques and how he's still continuing to improve his game. And he said also, I'm trying to think of the quote, but it was along the lines of he loves to also take from other pitchers on his staff, and he's very open to rookies coming up to him, and he wants to help grow the game and pass on information, which is that's nice to hear too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a good teammate. I really do. I think he can be loud and boisterous and probably annoying at sometimes, but I think overall he's probably a pretty good guy to have in the locker room because he is willing to teach guys and he just loves it seems like he just loves talking baseball. Um
And
so
that's
he's
I think
probably
yeah, that's a good way to describe it. I think he's a lot of misinterpreted, right? And I think that's a good way to put it. He just loves baseball. And maybe it comes off a little differently to some people and how he voices his opinion, but overall, yeah, he just loves baseball.
Mr. Misunderstood, that's for sure. I think at
Yeah.
least.
No, I agree.
Um we'll move on. I mean, we've talked a lot about football. We want to and talked a little bit about baseball. We want to get into something cool that we decided to do for this episode. So um, last week, Craig Button did who works for TSN. He did his projected 2022 Canadian men's Olympic hockey team roster. And so there was a huge discussion around could there was a huge discussion about how good Canada's roster is and whether if you took all the guys who didn't make that roster and made another one, that team could win gold too. So, I mean, I think I put on my Instagram like when I saw the roster, I said, "Can we just collect the gold now, or do we actually have to play the tournament?" I feel very confident in this team. So the team breaks down as your first line is Connor McDavid at center with Jonathan Huberdeau and Nathan McKinnon on the wings. So you have the two best players in the game on the same line. Your second line is the line from the 2014 Olympics that was dominant. Sidney Crosby, Brad Marchand, and Patrice Bergeron. Another great line. Third line, Braden Point with Bo Horvat and Mitch Marner. And then your fourth line, your checking line. I mean, I don't know if it gets any better than this. Mark Scheifele, Ryan O'Reilly, and Mark Stone. Mark Stone is on your fourth line.
I'm looking at these lines, and you can also get a little creative here, right? There's so many Canada has so many centers available to them that the
Mm-hmm.
options, their line combinations are endless. Imagine like I understand there's only one puck to go around, but could you imagine putting McDavid, Crosby, and McKinnon on the ice at the same time?
Well, I just counted on their roster, they have 8 centermen for the forwards. I mean, out of 14 forwards, 8 of them are centermen. So you have a lot of flexibility with that roster. Their defense breaks down as Shea Theodore playing with Cale Makar. By the way, Shea Theodore is a great player. I didn't realize he was this good.
He
He's
currently could be
fantastic.
he could be the most underrated defenseman in hockey right now.
He might win the Norris.
Yeah. And it feels like no one's talking. Everyone's talking about Alex Pietrangelo, that signing, but Shea Theodore, who's been there for a few years, is an absolute stud.
Yeah. So the second pairing is my boy Morgan, Big Mo, Morgan Riley. He'll be playing with Alex Pietrangelo. Thomas Chabot, again, another underrated defenseman, playing with Shea Weber, the timeless wonder. Playing, and then the extras for the forwards were Nick Suzuki and Matt Barzell. Forgot to mention those. The extras on defense was Bowen Byram and Colton Parayko. Colton Parayko I love as a defenseman. And then your goalies are Carey Price, Carter Hart, Mackenzie Blackwood. Mackenzie Blackwood having a great game. So what we decided to do was we were going to make up a roster of all the players, Canadian players who didn't make Canada's first team, and debate whether this team, our new teams, could win gold. So my team is John Tavares playing with Steven Stamkos and Taylor Hall. 3 first overall picks in a row. So it's pretty good. Tyler Seguin is centering Jamie Benn and Claude Giroux. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is centering Pierre-Luc Dubois and Travis Konechny. And then your fourth line is Sean Couturier, Jonathan Taves, and Anthony Mantha. Fairly good. And then my extras were Sean Monahan, Tom Wilson, and Josh Anderson. My defense was Ryan Ellis, Dougie Hamilton, and then Chris Letang, Aaron Ekblad. And then I had Jake Muzzin on my third pair. I thought he brings a little physicality to the team. And then Drew Doughty and then Nate Schmidt as my extra. So I'm only going with one extra defenseman. And the problem with my defensemen, I will say, and I will admit to, 5 of them are right-handed. Kurt's nodding his head.
Yeah, I noticed too, like when I was trying to pick my roster, that became a problem. The lack of left-handed, I guess, top-tier caliber defensemen, right? There was some that I left off that maybe if you're pushing for it, but there was a lack of, I don't know if you felt this as well. It almost felt like all the best young players were on that first team.
Mm-hmm. This team is a much older team.
Yeah, this team, the age seemed to be a factor, and maybe that's why, because it is 2022. So, but so
a lot of these guys
as well.
A lot of the guys on my team will be in their 30s by the time of 2022. My goalies are Marc-Andre Fleury, Darcy Kemper, and Jordan Bennington. I thought when I was looking at the roster and going through the goalies, I couldn't believe the caliber of goalies that were left off. These are some all-star goalies.
I did feel though that was the easiest position to pick, just because those 3 were miles ahead of the other ones available.
Yeah. Now break down your team.
All right. So I went with the same first line. I had Taylor Hall on the left wing, John Tavares up the middle, and Stamkos on the right. He's just familiar with that side. It worked. Now this is where I was a little different than you. Now Pierre-Luc Dubois is a guy I'm very high on Pierre-Luc Dubois. So he was center. He was left wing on my second line, followed by Ryan Nugent-Hopkins up the middle, and a guy who I love. He's had a great year, Tyler Toffoli. And I think you'll notice the trend of my team here, because if you're looking, obviously the idea is you want to try and beat as many other skilled countries as you can, right? Mm-hmm. Like Russia, Sweden, the tier 1 Canada team, Finland, they're all going to bring very skilled rosters. And I thought 2-way players with some physicality were key. So my third line was, you still need some scoring. So we had Sagan at left wing, Sean Monahan up the middle, Tyler Konechny on the right side. And then this could be my favorite line. Fourth line with some physicality and definitely some ability to score, and great in their own end and obviously offensively. But Braden Shen on the left side, up the middle, Sean Couturier, and on the right wing, Tom Wilson. And then Giroux and Josh Anderson were the extras.
Right on. I mean, I built my team. I built my teams similar in the idea of,
Yeah,
we need more physicality than
I
other teams.
I think looking at both these rosters, they're pretty similar. But when it came to defense, I like I said, I ran into the same issue as you. Not as much left-handed defenseman at that caliber as I hoped. But I had my first pairing was Ryan Ellis with Dougie Hamilton, both right-handed. Chris Letang and Aaron Ekblad, both right-handed. And this is Jacob Chikrin. Great year. He had a
Yep.
great start to the year. And this is 2022, remember. I think he could have potential to even play more minutes. I have my third pairing, but he could move up. And I have him paired right now. He's left-handed with Drew Doughty. And then the extra, I had Darnell Nurse.
Who's having a great year. 5
Yeah.
goals.
Yeah. Honestly, the minutes he has to play too with that very poor Edmonton D, I think that's another guy. I'm looking at the age of some of the guys ahead of him on this depth chart. He's a left-handed D man. He could push for big minutes.
Yep.
And then my goaltending was the exact same as yours. We discussed
Yeah.
that. I think the three were pretty clear. It was Jordan Binnington, Marc-Andre Fleury, Darcy Kemper.
So I'll ask you, do you think your team could win gold?
No, not a chance.
Not a chance, eh?
Okay, well, maybe I'll say there is obviously a chance, but just looking at the caliber of the first Canadian team, then just off the top of my head, I can think of the American roster would be unbelievable as well. I mean, McDavid and McKinnon is good, but can you imagine a line of Kane, Eichel, and Matthews? That'd be fun to watch too.
Yeah, I think our teams would be very, very competitive with the other teams. I think our biggest things with our teams would be the age. Could they play that many games in that short amount of time? I will go opposite of you, and I will say this team could win gold.
Really?
I do. I think that this team, there's obviously a lot of talent. There's a lot of either first overall picks or top 5 picks on the team. There's obviously a lot of experience, guys who have played on the international stage before, like Drew Doughty, and I think Chris Letang. Chris Letang's played in the Olympics, I think, right?
He might, in the most recent one, he may have. I'm not sure if he was an extra though, or I'm not sure if he was left off that team.
So a lot of guys, obviously Jonathan Taves, he's played. Steven Stamkos, John Tavares, they played on the international stage, and I think that the Olympics is, it's really what if they were to play, they would be playing like 11 months from now or so. I don't know if it will happen, but I think they could win. I think this team has enough physicality on it, enough experience with guys who you can squeeze a little bit more hockey out of. And I think the biggest thing with this team is it's a very hard-working team.
I also think the fun part about international hockey, single elimination, right? This team is a team that's going to have no quit in it. They're gritty. They can score, good at both ends of the ice. This could cause serious, like you said, good goaltending as well. There's a lot of good goalies that were still left. This team could win a close game. So I guess my answer still remains. I still think they're not as good as those maybe top 3 or 4 teams in the international play. But yeah, there's a chance.
And I look at teams like let's take Russia. Russia's top 6 is incredible, but their bottom 6 is compiled of a lot of players who are second line players in the NHL, which is the same as this team. Like there's some second line players, but really not that many. Like Josh Anderson has come back this year. Anthony Mantha, I think, is one of the most underrated players in the league. When he played at the World Championship, I mean, that guy can shoot it. That guy can fire it from anywhere. And obviously Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn, they've worked well together. It would be a cool thing you could do. Like this is obviously like an NHL 21 simulation where you just see what happens. It's not actually going to happen, but we just thought it'd be cool to make some rosters and debate it a little bit. Now that we're on to hockey, um, so Jim Rutherford was the president GM of Pittsburgh Penguins. He quit, so they went on the hunt for new management, and they found it. Brian Burke, old Berkey, was named president of hockey operations for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Ron Hextall was named GM. Do you like the move, Curtis?
You know what? I do. I'll start with Brian Burke, but I just love how honest he is. I mean, like maybe if you look at his tenure with the Leafs, it wasn't as successful as they hoped, but he was kind of left in a situation where they were in the middle of trying to get to where they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Pittsburgh's a tough situation as well, but just bringing in new faces, he's bringing in a first-time general manager here. And I think I just like his hockey expertise. I like what he's going to bring. I like the personality. I think it could be a good fit.
Yeah, I like him. I was saying, I was discussing with somebody that I think Brian Burke is a great guy to have when your team is ready to win, because he's not afraid to make. He doesn't care. He'll trade 4 first-round picks if he thinks the guy will help them win a Stanley Cup. So I like that move. If management still thinks that Pittsburgh can win, which I don't think they can, then it's a great move. And then Ron Hextall, obviously, he built up that roster in Philly, which is now winning. So I love it. I think it's a great move. Do you remember that article, or not the article, the story that came out about Brian Burke when he was on the plane trip to Latvia? You ever hear about this?
I didn't know.
Brian Burke, well, it says in the title of the article, gets legless. He got hammered on this plane ride. And it's one of the greatest stories ever. I guess he was on a plane with Dave Tiger Williams, who was an enforcer for the Canucks and the Maple Leafs. And Tiger Williams got charged with assault and sexual assault. And Brian Burke pissed his pants because he passed out drunk on the plane, and he pissed his seat, which is pretty good. I mean, I love that story from Berkey. Guy knows how to party.
I actually have one more note, because you're talking about you weren't sure if Pittsburgh management believes they can win. And I know he was pretty open about saying that they might be past their window on when he was part of Sportsnet, right?
Yep.
And I was watching his interview 2 days ago now, I think. But he said, I'm going to be honest with you guys. So if you put our roster up, you have to look at who your competition is. Is our roster as good as the Tampa Bay Lightning? They said, no, it's not. Okay, well, there's your answer. Now we look to he said you have to look to your left and your right with your two, like, what are your biggest competition? And then he said, is our roster as good as the Washington Capitals? They said, no. He said, well, I think you guys have your answer then. So you know what? You might but the problem is he didn't say they were going to throw in the towel either, because the problem is with the age of that roster, you don't have many options. They don't have many high picks. So you can try and add pieces, but will that really make them an elite contender again? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're done. Now, let's say Mario Lemieux, he's like, Jimmy Rutherford just quit, and he's like, God damn it. Need a new president, a new GM. And he calls this kid up in Ontario. He calls Curtis, and he goes, what's going on, bud? You want to be the president? You want to be the GM? Now, when you're behind the wheel, what's your move? What do you do? Do you tear it down? Do you keep going for it? What does Curtis's mind have brewing for this team?
All right. So I think the first thing you have to do, you walk up to Sidney Crosby and you say, do you want to stay and go through these tough years, or do you want to leave? Mm-hmm. And then you get your answer, and you either, okay, do you want me to still continue to trade our future to try and milk whatever we have left out of this? Or do I start to rebuild this, and you could just You have your 3 cups, you can cruise into retirement. And then you also have to ask, I don't know, Malkin is, I guess he's in that same category, but he's coming up on free agency. So that's if maybe do you ask both them or do you ask Crosby? Is that a factor? Then that impacts your decision, right? I could see Crosby being in that same situation with Lemieux as he could retire there and move his way into management as well. But I think that's the first thing. That's the first thing I would do. You have to address that situation with Crosby.
Yeah, I think that anytime you ask a player, do you want to win or do you want to suck? They're obviously going to say, I want to win. I think that the window is officially closed on the Pittsburgh Penguins and that they should tear it down. Um, this year, I think they have 5 wins this year. One of them is in regulation. They have the least amount of wins in regulation. So they're not getting it done within 60 minutes.
They also
is what that's saying.
They just have not played good hockey. Their goaltending has been horrendous, and there's just too many holes in that roster that 3 years ago they could have got away with some of those holes because, I mean, Crosby still looks great, but Malkin's lost a step. Letang probably has lost a slight step. They can't get away with what they used to, and it's noticeable now, very noticeable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can pull enough strings to get enough wins together. Like, I don't think there's enough draft picks you can trade. I don't think there's enough prospects you can trade. You don't have any. You traded them all. And now this is the situation you're in where, as an owner, and I get as an owner, I mean, you drafted these guys won you 3 cups. You know, they're like your kids. Like, you know, Sidney Crosby lived at Mario Lemieux's house. He's like his kid. Like, you don't want to trade him away. But there's also the reality that, you know, the Oilers weren't going to win forever. The Penguins aren't going to win forever. So you have to make those moves where you have to have.
You got to think too. You're watching the Blackhawks go through that right now.
Yeah.
You can see it right in front of you. It's what happens if you win as many cups as they did. Those teams did. LA too is another example. It happens. You have to deal with the next 5 years after, maybe longer, before you're going to be back to a competitive state.
Yeah, and you know, Crosby will be 38 by that time.
The thing is,
Malkin will be 40. So
you'll sit here and say though you do it again because you got 3 cups of it. It's just the way it works.
You would do it again in a heartbeat. I mean,
absolutely.
Like, you know, Lemieux being the owner and Crosby being the star and having Letang and Malkin run shotgun. You saved hockey in Pittsburgh. You saved hockey in Pittsburgh. That team was not going to last.
No, they'd actually, that's a perfect way. They did save hockey in Pittsburgh.
They saved hockey in Pittsburgh. And I think it's like that time at the end of the movie where it's like the old guy has to step aside. And Crosby is still a very good player. And Malkin is still, I said last night, Malkin is the greatest streaky player ever, where he has 6 points now, but he could finish the year with 60. So, I mean,
that's another reason too. It's important if they can somehow, not that he'll maybe want to do this, but if Crosby does want to stay competitive and he's willing to get traded, this process can go a lot smoother and faster than they think. But right now, that's not realistic. Both those guys are going to age. If they want to hang around, just cruise into retirement and retire as a Penguin, which I'm sure they're not going to tell them no, then this process is going to be a lot more painful than it could be.
Yeah, it's going to be a painful transition. And I think, like I said, again, you saved hockey, your job is done. You know, you're still a good player. Go win somewhere else. Like, you're a Penguins legend. You know, behind Lemieux, you guys are second and third greatest Penguins of all time. Maybe Yager. Yager's probably in there. But you know, go to a different team. Go win somewhere else. You know, there was rumors Crosby might, you know, if he was traded, would he be traded to Montreal? As a Leafs fan, I hate that.
I was about to say you probably would not enjoy that, would you?
I would hate it. I would say, hey, Wayne Simmons, go take his head off. I don't care that he gets 6 games. Go hurt him. Take him off. I don't want him. Don't want him in this game. He's a problem for everybody. Or we said last week, I forget if we talked about it on the show, but like, could you imagine Sidney Crosby in Colorado with Nathan McKinnon? They have tons of cap space. That's like there are avenues that the Penguins could take if Sidney Crosby wanted to take them, where they get some assets back. He gets to go play and probably win, especially if he goes to Colorado.
It's really just depends if he's willing to leave or not. If he that's what it comes down to, because you're not going to move him unless he wants to be. If he doesn't make it apparent that he wants to be moved, he won't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
He will retire a Penguin.
Yeah. I agree. If he wants to stay and they like having him, then he'll stay. We'll see. We'll see what Berkey and Hextall do. We'll do one more story and then we'll get into our picks. How about that?
Sounds good.
What do you think is going on in Columbus?
You know what? At first, I thought this was a Tortorella issue. The first time I said no, I watched the shift. Dubois there's no doubt he should have been benched. Then when Laine I said, okay, what is he doing? Who is he trying to prove something to? But then I heard the story. It was apparently he mouthed off to an assistant coach. So now I'm siding again with Tortorella. I was like, okay, that makes sense. So maybe it just looks bad on John Tortorella because you're still thinking, what is going on here? You're doing this to another star. If this doesn't happen in the next 2 weeks, this is a non-issue.
Like, I think that Patrick Laine, quite honestly, I think he thinks his shit don't stink. Because, you know, you're mouthing off to the assistant coach. You've been there 4 games, guy.
Yeah, that is a tough look.
You get benched. It looks bad on your coach. It looks bad on your GM. Looks terrible on your GM. So it's a bad. And then another thing that throws a wrench in this stuff is Mikko Koivu retires. So he wants out of there. Like that kind of,
you know what? Now that because it was so soon into it was almost still pretty early in the year. I just wish he would have retired as a Wild. Like I wish because now his whole career would have been spent there. It just would have looked a lot better than that blimp on your resume of 9 games in Columbus or 8 games, whatever it was, right? Yeah. I mean, no one's gonna remember it, I know, but wouldn't that have been nice? You retired captain of the Wild still, just your whole drafted by them, 6th overall, I think, or if I'm not mistaken. But now, I don't know. I just would have much preferred him retire as a Wild.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he just didn't have the legs. He didn't have the love for it anymore. The passion was gone. But
I think it's probably a combination of both and just a weird year. Like it can't be as enjoyable as the previous years, right? With all the COVID, the cancellation, postponements, if he knew after the year he was going to retire, there's other stuff going on in Columbus as we're discussing. It probably just made sense. He's probably, I might as well step away now.
Yeah. So
he had a diminished role to begin with anyways.
He had a diminished role and
I think
Columbus isn't playing well. And
yeah.
But it was worth bringing up because you got Dubois wanting out and then you got Laine getting benched and Laine came out and said he was like, I don't think this is going to affect me wanting to stay here long term. But we'll see. I think the guy obviously has skill. He's a 40 goal scorer. He could score 50, in his sleep. I mean, but then again, we say that, but he's never actually scored 50. So
I know so many people say that, and I was like, but he's never done it. He's never scored 50. Like I too believe it, but he's never done it. How do I say he can score 50 if he's never scored 50?
Exactly. So, but if he went back, if he ended up back in Finland, wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Like it seems like he's not to the level of a Tony D'Angelo, which we talked about, but he's just he seems to be a problem for people. He seems to be a headache for some people, and if you're mouthing off to the assistant coach, he needs to get checked.
On a different note, how good has Jack Roslovic been there?
Yeah, he had that one. He had that one play.
I think he's like a 5 or 6 game point streak. He's like 7 points in 5 games since he's got there. He's looked, or it might even be 7 game point streak now. I think it's 5 though. But he looked really good.
Yeah, he might be. Somebody tweeted out, like, is he the centerpiece of this trade that we haven't been talking about? But yeah, so I mean, we'll see. We'll see where Lonnie goes. I mean, somebody will pay him because he's a goal scorer, and goal scorers get paid. But we'll just see. So we'll get into the picks real quick that we have for the weekend. Curtis, why don't you go first?
All right. I took on Saturday night, I'd have the Flames over the Canucks, the 76ers over the Suns. And then on Sunday, I had the Capitals over the Penguins. And then going to the welterweight title in UFC 258, I have Kamaru Usman.
So Usman is currently tied with GSP for consecutive UFC wins with 12. If he wins, on Saturday, then he'll pass him. He currently actually has a 16 fight win streak. So that's obviously not, that's everything. That's not just the UFC. He hasn't lost since 2013. It's kind of crazy. He's never been knocked down with a shot. He's never been taken down. So he's obviously he's dangerous. So it's hard to bet against him, but I will bet against him. I'll go with Gilbert Burns. He's 19-3-0 currently. He is a multiple-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion. He's currently on a 6-fight win streak, and he's undefeated at welterweight. I honestly could see this one going either way. Obviously, Gilbert is the number one contender for a reason, and Usman is the champion for a reason. So I'll go with Burns. He's a heavy underdog, but I'll go with him. My other picks are I have the Leafs over the Canadiens on Saturday. Leafs picked up a win against the Canadiens last night. We're filming this on Thursday, so they won on Wednesday. I have the Warriors beating the Nets on Saturday. I think the Nets just play horrible defense. No, not much more to say about that. And Steph Curry is a lot better than I thought he was. I mean, he's a 2-time MVP, but he's a lot better than I thought he was. I'm going to give you a little NASCAR pick. The Daytona 500. Daytona 500 is this weekend. And I tell you right now, the number 11 car, Denny Hamlin, he's going to win again. I think he's won twice in a row. And I think he's going to pick up a third win this weekend. So that'll be on Sunday. And praise Jesus. And I think Denny Hamlin's going to pick up another win. So go bet on him. I assume he would be the favorite. So go pick that up. Go take that pick. I bet on him last year. And by golly, he made me a lot of money. So there we go.
I like the way both broke the number one rule of gambling. Don't pick your favorite teams, but hey, gotta go with it.
Actually, I never even thought about that.
Yeah. I'm looking at this and I was like, interesting. I took the Capitals against the Penguins. You took the Leafs over the Habs. Oh, well.
I never even thought about that, bro. Hey, again, if you come here for the gambling picks, seriously, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Because I break my rules just about every weekend.
We talked about the gambling record from last weekend, so.
Yeah, I always bet on my favorite team, and I always take the over-under with the spread. So don't actually listen to me. So we'll wrap it up. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it. This has been Taking All Bets, episode 2. Links for all the social media will be in the bio or in the description or whatnot. So go there, follow us on social media, so you can figure out when the next episode will be coming out. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.